In this video, we're going to go over part number 4 of the dog-leg indicator project. You'll see here this part isn't the final part. If I go into my configuration, you'll see this is what the final part's going to look like. So you'll see we need to do quite a few steps to get this to work. First, we're going to churn the outside to look like this in the configuration. But actually not quite like this, because we need to add some material on the end that we can use to hold into a 4th axis rotary on a mill. So the solid that you have that was downloaded is not quite accurate to what we want to make. So we're going to modify the actual solid part before we actually start programming it. So to do this, we're going to choose this back face here, and we're going to create a circle. Either convert the edge or create a circle and then extrude this out a specific distance. So to do this, we're going to go into Sketch. I'm going to click on Sketch to create one, and in my case I'm just going to convert the entities. That will just make a sketch around the outside of it for me to work with. And then under Features, I'm going to extrude a boss base. And this will bring this out a ways. We want the overall length of the part to be 2.5 inches long. So if I know the distance from here to here, which I would get from my print, then I can add that on here. Now I believe the distance from here to here is 1.140, but if we don't know, we can always just accept this at some given number, and I can do a file open, and I can open the print. So I'm going to go to part 4, I'm going to look at the print. Here's my print here, I hit open. And I see in here, yes, it is 1.14. So I need to get back to the other drawing, so I can hit Control Tab on my keyboard. And that will bring me back to this part. And I'm now going to edit this feature. So I click here, Edit Feature. And that actually went into the revolve feature, not exactly what I wanted. So I will actually need to go into this boss here and edit that feature. Alright, so if I take 2.5 minus 1.14, that'll give me my length, and I'll hit OK. Alright, so now we actually have the part that we want to churn. So at this point I'm going to overwrite my old solid part, just so my solid part's updated to what I'm actually going to make. So I'm going to hit Save, and we're ready to go. So at this point I'll go over to the Delcam for SolidWorks tab, and I'll click on Machine a Part. Do you want to machine the current drawing or document? Yes. I am going to use MC Inch Churn for Madison College Inch Churn, but if you don't have it, you can just use Inch Churn. And I'll hit Open. And here's this part. And you're going to notice the first thing we need to do is get the Z aligned properly. Right now the Z is like this, and we need it to go through here. So under my stock axis, I'm just going to choose, this cylinder, or I could have chose that cylinder, just a cylinder to get it to have the Z go along this axis. And then I'll hit the Next button, and this is where I can get my stock. So I'm going to use a bounding cylinder, and I just choose my part. And you'll see here it gives me a bounding cylinder that it will use for rough stock. The back I want to add on 1.5 inches or so it's something to hold into the chuck. On the front I'm going to add on 10 thousandths, and radially this is 1.25 inches, I believe. I'm not sure what we have for stock. I'm guessing we'll have 1.25 inches, but we can always adjust that. But radially, I'm just going to put on 25 thousandths. That will force it to actually machine down the outside of this part and not think that it's already churned. Material, I'll hit Browse. And in here, I'm going to change this to Madison College Stainless. And I'm going to hit OK. I'll now accept my stock setup. Now we need to get our setup of for our G54. You'll see it's on the center of this here. We really don't want it there. We want to shift it over this way a little ways. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go into my location and I'm just going to tell it to be at the end of my part minus 10 thousandths. So for location, I can click here and you'll see it moved over to there, but it's, if you look at it from the front, it's out too far. We want it to be at the end of our part. So we know we added 10 to the front for a rough stock, so I'm going to tell it in here negative 0.01. And now if you look at it in our front view, you'll see that my setup is right at the end of our part. And I'll hit OK. Rotate this around so it looks like it's actually in the machine. And there we have our part set up, and at this point we're ready to put some geometry on here. We do have a sketch that goes around the outside, but we want that sketch to follow it all the way down to the end here. So if I looked in my sketch history, you'd see it in my revolve sketch. It has it, but it's not going far enough down. Now I could take this sketch and I could copy it to a different level and then modify it so that goes all the way down. That'd be one way of doing it. I could also do an intersection curve of the part and do a little trimming. So for this part, I am going to copy this to a front or top surface, depending on which one aligns to it. So if I were to go in here and say top, you'll see that that goes through the center, but it doesn't really align to what I want. Front actually aligns to what I want. So I'd leave it on front here. I tell it I want to do a sketch, and I click on the sketch button to actually produce one. And then what I can do is I can go over here and I can choose this sketch in my tree, and I can click on Convert Entities. And what that'll do is it'll make it a copy of that sketch right onto this new plane for me. And I will not accept it. I need to do a little modification of it here. I need to get rid of this relationship here. And I also need to get rid of this relationship, I believe. And possibly this one. Oh, let's just get rid of all of them. And this will give me a light blue that I can drag. So if I take this and I drag this back, you'll see I can get it like this. And I could maybe do a relationship of this to here. Let's see. I'll pick here, I'll drag it out. See how I get a coinciding symbol? Now that's all the way out there. Now I could add other relationships, but I know that it is in the correct spot. So I'm just going to accept that. And close the sketch. Now we have the geometry we need to work with. Now what we can do is actually put the toolpaths on that we need. We could face the end off, but we really won't need to because we're actually going to be taking this and churning it all the way from the center here. And all we're really trying to do here is rough this off, finish it, and then we'll cut it off at the end of the part. The next step, we're going to put it in a 4th axis rotary and do the other machining on it. And then after that, there's even another setup. So at this point here, I can go to my Delcam tab here, and I can see that I have a churn, and I have setup 1. And then in here for Delcam, my toolbar up here, I can go into New Feature. So I'll do a New Feature, and I want to do a churn bore. So I'll hit OK. And you'll see it just automatically chose that sketch because that's what I had chosen over in the property manager. But if it didn't, you'll just pick on it and it'll choose it for you. So for instance, if I didn't have it chosen, I could just come over here and grab it and it would do it for me. And then I hit OK. If I simulate it, you'll see that it actually churns the part down for me and it's all good to go. We would have to go in and do some editing to make sure we're getting the right Z steps, the right X diameter steps, make sure we're using the tool we want, the feeds and speeds. So I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to go into my churn and look at some of the information. Alright, so here's my main information. It's doing churning, rough yes, feed direction negative, semi-finish no. So it's just going to do one pass over it and then another pass. Finding what tool it is and what actual feeds and speeds will be in these. And I'm going to double click on rough pass 1. And I'll see it's using an 80-degree diamond tool, which is totally fine. It's using 275 surface feet, which is good. 0.006 inches per revolution, which is fine, using coolant. Everything I see in here should work just fine. Now hit OK. And for the finishing tool, it's also using the 80, which would work, but usually you want to use a different finish tool than a roughing tool. So I would double click this, and I'm going to change this instead of an 80-degree diamond to a 55-degree diamond. And I'm going to look for a 55 churn. So here I see a 55 churn. Let me scroll this over a little bit. Right hand. Make sure you're not getting the M there for the metric one. And I'm going to hit OK. And this is using 300 surface feet with 0.003 inches per revolution. A little bit faster for the finish pass. And we'll hit OK. Now if I do a simulation, you'll see it rough and finish. It's really fast. It's hard to see in here. But if I did it step by step, I could see it come down. Rough this off. Rough a little more. And you see it's taking steps in as it goes. Should be fine. And then for the finish pass, it comes in, feeds up, over, and down towards the back, exits out. So at this point, it looks pretty good. We're just going to cut it off. So to do a cutoff, I go into New Feature and Cut Off. Now hit OK. Location, pretty simple. I just choose the end of my part. Outer diameter is the actual stock. You see we get that there. Width 165. This will default usually to 0.250, but you would type in 165. And then I can hit OK. If you type in the 165, because you're using the Madison College library, it'll already have that tool in there, so it won't give you an error. If you are using the wrong library, it won't find that tool, and you would have to make one. So now if I play this through, roughs, finishes, cuts it off. So this portion of the part is done. Then we're going to go on to the fourth axis portion.